Let me ask you something. When did English first start to feel difficult for you? Was it when you met your first phrasal verb? When you realized pronunciation doesn't always match the spelling? Or maybe when you tried to understand idioms that made no logical sense?
Today, I want to start with a bit of honesty. I'm a native English speaker. I've been teaching English for years, and I have to admit something that might surprise you. Sometimes, I think the English language can be really, really stupid. I know that sounds harsh, but trust me, I'm saying it with love and with complete understanding of how you feel as a learner. See, here's the thing. If you've ever felt frustrated while studying English, if you've ever thought, this doesn't make any sense, or why is it written one way but pronounced another, then I want you to know the problem isn't you. English can be confusing, messy, and completely illogical at times. And today, we're going to unpack exactly why that happens. Welcome back to English Uncovered. It's always great to have you here, whether you're listening from your car, your kitchen, or during a quick study break. I'm Peter, your English coach and fellow language nerd. In this episode, we'll talk about a few big questions. Why English seems easy at first, but suddenly becomes much harder the more you learn. Why our spelling and pronunciation feel like they come from two different planets. And most importantly, why you shouldn't let that stop you. Because there's actually some good news hidden in all this madness. By the end of this episode, you'll understand that perfection isn't the goal. Communication is. You don't have to speak flawlessly to be understood or to connect with others in English. In fact, native speakers make mistakes all the time. So if you've been holding yourself back because you think you're not ready, I've got a message today that might completely change the way you see your English journey. So grab your coffee, settle in, and stay with me till the end because I'm going to share something that I truly believe can motivate you and help you see English in a totally new light. Let's dive right in. When most people start learning English, they often say something like, "Wow, this language is easier than I expected." And honestly, they're not wrong, at least not in the beginning. English gives off this beautiful illusion of simplicity. It seems so straightforward at first, especially compared to other languages. You quickly notice that there's only one definite article, the. That's it. We don't bother with different versions like in Spanish, French, or Portuguese. We don't have masculine and feminine nouns, so you never have to worry about whether a chair is he or she. You just call it the chair. That alone makes English feel refreshingly easy when you're starting out. And then there are the verb forms. At the beginner level, everything feels nice and predictable. The present simple, the past simple, they all seem to follow clear logical patterns. I did, you did, he did, we did, they did. There's a certain rhythm to it, almost musical in its simplicity. When I teach beginners, I often see this moment of relief on their faces. It's like they've found a language that finally doesn't torture them with dozens of conjugations or strange endings. It's fun, it's fast, and it feels like real progress is being made. But here's where the trap lies. This early simplicity, while comforting, can be a bit misleading. It makes you think, hey, maybe English isn't that bad after all. Maybe I'll be fluent in no time. And that confidence is great. I love seeing students feel that way. But sooner or later, the language reveals its true colors. Because English, my friends, is like a friendly-looking cat that suddenly shows its claws when you try to pet it the wrong way. I remember one of my students, her name was Sophia, who told me after a few months of lessons, "Peter, I think I've mastered English. It's actually pretty easy." I just smiled and said, "Give it time." About 2 weeks later, she came back looking completely defeated. She had tried to read an article full of phrasal verbs like get over, take up, run into. And she said, "Peter, what is this? None of these make any sense." We both laughed, but that moment perfectly captures what happens to almost every learner.
At the beginning, English seems like a calm sea, smooth and manageable. But as you sail further, the waves start to rise. And the grammar, pronunciation, and endless exceptions begin to crash around you. And that's when reality hits. You realize that the language isn't as simple as it first appeared. But then, things start to get complicated. There's a moment in every English learner's journey when things begin to change. You move from the beginner level, where everything feels light and manageable, into that intermediate space, around the B1 or B2 level, and suddenly the language you once thought was simple starts to twist and turn in unexpected ways. It's like walking through a door into a new world where all the old rules you learned don't seem to work anymore. You start to realize that for every rule in English, there's at least one exception, and sometimes 5. You learn that what worked yesterday might not work today, and it can leave you feeling completely lost. For example, take irregular verbs, those sneaky little troublemakers. You memorize go, went, gone, and you think, okay, I've got this. But then you meet verbs like put, or read, read, and suddenly you're not sure if you're supposed to change them or not. Or you start learning phrasal verbs, and that's when the real chaos begins. You realize that adding a tiny preposition can completely change the meaning of a word. Take off can mean removing something, but it also can mean when a plane leaves the ground. Get over can mean recovering from an illness or from a breakup. Run into could mean literally bumping into someone or just meeting them by chance. The combinations are endless, and to make it worse, they rarely translate logically into other languages. And then there are idioms, those strange expressions that make no literal sense, but native speakers use all the time. When someone says, "It's raining cats and dogs," or "break a leg," or "hit the books," learners often look confused and wonder if we've collectively lost our minds. I can't blame them. English idioms are colorful, creative, and completely confusing, but they're also part of what makes the language rich and full of personality. It's around this stage that frustration usually kicks in. You start to doubt yourself. You start thinking, maybe I'm just not good at languages. Maybe I'm not smart enough for this. And that's when I want you to pause and remember something very important. You are not bad at English. English is just complicated. Even native speakers get things wrong all the time. I teach English for a living, and I still find new exceptions or strange grammar quirks that make me shake my head. So if you're at that point right now, the moment where English suddenly feels like a mountain instead of a hill, I want you to take a deep breath and give yourself some credit. You've already come a long way. The fact that you're noticing these complexities means you're growing as a learner. It's not a sign of failure, it's a sign of progress.
Let me ask you something. When did English first start to feel difficult for you? Was it when you met your first phrasal verb? When you realized pronunciation doesn't always match the spelling? Or maybe when you tried to understand idioms that made no logical sense? Think about that moment, and remember that everyone who learns English has been there. You're not alone in the struggle. Now, let's talk about what I like to call the nightmare duo of the English language: spelling and pronunciation. If there's one area that drives learners absolutely crazy, it's this one. You look at a word and you think you know how it should sound, but then you say it out loud, and a native speaker stares at you like you just said something from another planet. The problem is that in English, the way we write and the way we speak have very little to do with each other. You can't always guess pronunciation from spelling, and you can't always spell a word correctly just by hearing it. It's a complete guessing game sometimes, and even native speakers lose. The reason for this mess actually goes back hundreds of years. A long time ago, about 500 years in the past, English spelling and pronunciation were much closer. People used to pronounce words more or less the way they were written. But over the centuries, something called the Great Vowel Shift happened. Our pronunciation changed dramatically, but our spelling stayed frozen in time. So, while other languages, like Spanish or Italian, decided to modernize their spelling to match pronunciation, English said, nope, we're keeping it the old way. The result? We now have this huge gap between the way words look and the way they sound. Let's take a few examples. Think about these 4 words: though, through, thought, and tough. They all look similar, right? They all have that OUGH ending. But listen to how they're pronounced: though, through, thought, and tough. 4 different sounds from the same group of letters. That's the kind of inconsistency that makes English learners want to pull their hair out, and honestly, I don't blame you. Even native speakers find it ridiculous sometimes. There's no logic to it. It's simply history that refused to change. So, what can you do about it? The truth is, you can't fix English spelling, but you can develop habits that make pronunciation easier. One of the best things you can do is never learn a word from text alone. Whenever you learn a new word, always listen to how it's pronounced. Use Google Translate, Bing, or any good online dictionary. Most of them have a little speaker icon that lets you hear the correct pronunciation instantly. Play it a few times, repeat it out loud, get the sound into your memory, not just the spelling. That way, you're training your brain and your mouth at the same time. And here's a small challenge for you today. Pick one new word. Any word you've recently learned, or maybe one that always confuses you, and master it completely. Learn its meaning, check its pronunciation, and repeat it until it feels natural. If you do this every day, even with just one word, you'll notice huge improvements in your speaking and listening skills over time. Because in English, knowing how to say a word is just as important as knowing what it means.
As you move higher in your English journey, maybe reaching that advanced level or trying to polish your fluency, you begin to realize that English demands one thing above all else: memorization. There's just no way around it. At first, it feels like you can rely on rules and logic to understand how the language works, but the deeper you go, the more exceptions you encounter. It's like climbing a staircase where every few steps, one of them is missing or shaped differently. You learn a rule, and just when you think you've mastered it, you discover 10 words or expressions that completely ignore that rule. That's the reality of English. At this stage, you find yourself memorizing not only vocabulary, but also exceptions, irregular verbs, strange spelling patterns, pronunciation quirks, and even word combinations that simply don't make sense when translated. You start to notice that some verbs demand certain prepositions, others don't. Some nouns are countable, others aren't, and there's no logical reason why. You might spend hours learning how to use say versus tell, do versus make, or why we say in the morning but at night. These details can feel endless, and sometimes you might wonder, when does this stop? Well, the truth is, it doesn't completely stop. Even native speakers are still learning. And believe me, I say that from experience. Even I, as a teacher and a native speaker, still forget some exceptions. Sometimes a student will ask me, "Peter, why do we say it this way and not that way?" And honestly, my only answer is, because that's how English decided to work. It's not always logical. It's historical, cultural, and constantly evolving. So if you feel overwhelmed by all the memorization, please know that you're not doing anything wrong. You're just experiencing English as it truly is: unpredictable, inconsistent, but also incredibly rich and expressive.
That said, there are smart ways to deal with this chaos. One of the best strategies you can use is spaced repetition. It's a learning technique that helps you remember things by reviewing them at increasing intervals. A little today, a little tomorrow, then a few days later. Apps like Anki or Quizlet use this method, and it works wonders for memorizing vocabulary, irregular verbs, or tricky spelling patterns. But here's the secret. Don't just memorize isolated words. Try to learn in context. When you learn a new word, immediately use it in a sentence, write it in your journal, or say it out loud in a short story. The brain remembers meaning much better when words are connected to emotions or real-life examples. And don't forget pronunciation. It should be part of your daily routine. Spend just a few minutes every day listening, repeating, and recording yourself. You'll be surprised at how quickly your mouth adapts to the rhythm and melody of English. Above all, keep this in mind. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep going. Every mistake, every forgotten rule, every confusing exception is part of the process. The people who become fluent aren't the ones who know everything. They're the ones who don't quit when things get messy.
Here's the part I love most, the good news. After everything we've talked about, the confusing rules, the strange spelling, the endless exceptions, I want to remind you of something that can completely change the way you see your English learning journey. Communication is the real goal. The purpose of language isn't to sound perfect, it's to connect. It's to share your thoughts, express your feelings, and understand others. And you can do that even if your grammar isn't perfect or your pronunciation isn't flawless. In fact, you already have everything you need to start communicating right now. So many learners get stuck in this trap of perfectionism. They tell themselves, "I'll start speaking when I'm ready," or "I'll talk to native speakers when my English is perfect." But the truth is, that day never comes, because no one, not even native speakers, speaks perfect English all the time. We make mistakes constantly. We forget words, we use the wrong prepositions, we start sentences and don't finish them. Just listen to everyday conversations between native speakers. They're full of corrections, pauses, and grammatical slip-ups. The difference is, we don't let those mistakes stop us from speaking. I remember once during a lesson, a student told me, "Peter, I want to sound like a native speaker before I start having real conversations." And I told her, "That's like saying you'll start swimming once you've learned how to swim perfectly." You learn by doing. You get better by jumping in, getting a little wet, and figuring things out as you go. That's how language works. You can study grammar books for years, but if you never use what you're learning, you'll never feel truly comfortable in English. Here's the key takeaway. Speak every day, even if it's messy. Write something every day, even if it's short. Listen to English daily and read a little bit too. Not to be perfect, but to stay connected with the language. And as you do all that, yes, keep learning the rules and the exceptions, but don't wait until you've mastered them before you start communicating. Learn while you communicate. Make mistakes, correct them later, and keep moving forward. That's how real progress happens. So my message to you is simple. Start speaking today, not next week, not next month. Don't wait for that magical moment when you'll feel ready, because that moment doesn't exist. The sooner you start using English to express yourself, however imperfectly, the faster you'll grow. Communication will give you confidence, and confidence will give you motivation. And little by little, your English will become clearer, smoother, and more natural. You just have to take that first step, today. As we come to the end of today's episode, let's take a moment to breathe and reflect on everything we've covered.
English can be a strange and unpredictable language, sometimes even downright illogical. The rules don't always make sense, the spelling doesn't match the pronunciation, and just when you think you've mastered one rule, you discover 5 exceptions. But here's the truth. That doesn't mean you're bad at English. It simply means you're learning one of the most complex and fascinating languages in the world. And if you've made it this far, you're already doing an incredible job.
Remember what we talked about? Spelling and pronunciation can be tricky, but that's not a sign of failure. It's a sign that you're moving forward into the deeper layers of the language. And yes, memorizing rules and exceptions is part of the process, but perfection isn't the goal. Communication is. What matters most is your ability to express yourself, to connect, to be understood, even if your sentences aren't perfect. You don't need flawless grammar to make someone smile, ask for help, or share your story. Fluency isn't something that happens overnight. It's not a single moment or milestone. Fluency is a journey, a long, beautiful road made of small, consistent steps. Every word you learn, every mistake you make, every conversation you try, they all count. They all move you forward. Some days will feel easy, others frustrating, but both are part of your growth. So instead of chasing perfection, celebrate progress. Here's my challenge for you this week. Record yourself speaking English for 1 minute every day. Just 1 minute. Talk about anything, your day, your dreams, your favorite movie, or something you learned. Don't worry about mistakes. Don't even listen to it right away if that makes you nervous. The goal is to build comfort, not perfection. By the end of the week, you'll not only see how much more confident you sound, but you'll also realize that you're capable of more than you thought. Keep learning, keep speaking, and most importantly, keep going. Your English journey is unique, and every step you take matters. Remember, fluency isn't an event, it's a journey. And today, you've just taken another step forward. Thank you so much for staying with me all the way to the end of today's episode. I really appreciate you taking the time to learn and grow your English with me. It means a lot. If you found this episode helpful or inspiring, make sure to follow English Uncovered with Peter so you don't miss any future lessons and stories that will help you make sense of this wonderfully crazy language. I'd love to hear from you too. Leave a comment and tell me, what's the most confusing part of English for you? Is it pronunciation, phrasal verbs, spelling, or maybe those endless exceptions we talked about today? Your feedback helps me know what to cover next, and it also helps other learners realize they're not alone in the struggle. And don't forget to check the episode notes below. I've added some extra resources, links, and tips to help you keep improving your English every day. All right, that's it for today. Thanks again for tuning in. And remember, keep uncovering English one word at a time. I'll see you next week.